All right, brother. Well, this will be our 7 month hiatus and reconnection. I know it's been some time. A lot of our communities have been wondering when we were going to reconnect, and here we are. And I'm really looking forward to this one because a lot has unfolded over the past half a year since we last connected. And I know you've been doing great work. I've been kind of staying in my own lane and focusing on everything that I'm doing over in the markets and in finances, crypto, etc. So how's everything been going?
It's good. It's been a hectic 7 months. A lot. It hasn't been just a lot of growth. It's been a lot of learning. It's been me realizing that even though my channel has become very, very successful, I have made a lot of mistakes on the way. And I try to correct them as I go, but you just can't please everybody. And it's a learning process. I didn't set out to have a YouTube channel, but once I decided this was the way I was going to unveil all my research and theories, then I've had to stick with it. It's been a rocky road though, but it's been a good ride. Been a
I'm
good
glad
ride.
that you bring that up because I was in a very similar situation. I wasn't going to make a YouTube channel. I actually was helping people with consultation stuff and uh, doing a little bit of planning for portfolios and helping people with education and cryptocurrency and investment thesis. And it was my clients that pushed me to make a YouTube channel. I had no desire to get into this. And now that you've revealed what you said about how you weren't expecting the success, and as you get there, you kind of have to deal with the detour signs along the way. It's all about how you respond to them, right? I think
Yeah,
sometimes
it
people
is.
want to get under your skin in the comments, or maybe people will make videos clipping things that you said, and kind of taking things out of context. Or so, yeah. I mean, it's rough being a creator sometimes when you step into that creative essence. It's hard to stay in your lane and to stay focused on your purpose. But it's a beautiful thing to admit that you're learning in the process as well, and that's why you've had the growth you've had. Also, congratulations for the success of your channel, because when we last connected, I think you were maybe like 20 or 30 subs, and then you just exploded. So, what do you think led to that explosive supporter count? Was it doing a lot of interviews or viral content, or what do you think it was?
Well, I think it's a combination of several factors. Um, I think two of the main factors is that the Phoenix phenomenon is a new idea. It's a new theory with new sources, with new things to explain older paradigms, and it's drawn a lot of people. Initially, that draws a lot of people. Simulation theory is not novel. There's 100 channels talking about simulation theory,
Yeah.
but I think the main allure, and this is the opinion of the people that have emailed me, talked to me, support me. Um, the main allure is, believe it or not, it's the information is coming from such an unusual individual, somebody who has a very extensive criminal history,
Hmm.
not a criminal past. I mean, my whole imprisonment was just from a 1 hour episode in my life when I was 17 years old that went horribly wrong. Now, but my my imprisonment and the stories that I tell about in prison and how I just adopted prison culture and I had just given up on culture and life and I didn't care about anything. And then out of that, I was reading the whole time and I was researching and I didn't really know which direction I was going, but it was building over the years. Then I started data mining and then I started really, really realizing I was onto something. And the allure is they're getting all this information from somebody who doesn't have an academic credential, doesn't have that
Right.
that that doesn't have that not qualified, but really entitled. A lot of people who come from the universities, our institutes, our prestigious organizations, um, a lot of people don't want to listen to them. They feel like they're like, well, this person's just a person who's entitled. They had the money for a really good education. They enjoyed that education. Then when they get out, they're basically parroting the very things that they were taught instead of bringing anything new to the table. And a lot of people have come to my channel because I'm an ex-con. I they feel they're on an equal playing field with me. That well, if Jason did it, anybody can do it. So they
Yeah.
listen to my message and realize, wow, his first videos, he was poor. He was living. He was literally like a lot of my listeners. And yet I was steady saying, hey, this is what's about to happen. I'm about to do this right here. Hey, y'all hang tight. Next few videos you're going to see, I'm going to come up because I'm applying the very principles that I was teaching my audience. And I only had 200 subs. And then I had 400 subs. Then I had 800 subs. And people are watching my growth as I'm teaching the very principles that I'm living. And they're watching this. And now, I mean, yeah, I'm more successful than you know, Jordan. I'm not just talking about YouTube. The Archaix footprint is very wide now, and all the little things that used to worry and wonder about, like in finances and the acquisition of properties, and then putting buildings on properties and vehicles. All those were things that when I began my channel were goals. Those are no longer goals. They've all been met. Now my goals are more on a better way to present the material that I have that's more understandable, so people don't have to spend so much time on so many different disparate videos. I'm now learning how to bring all this data into real powerful 1 hour presentations that allow them to get a lot more by investing a lot less time.
Yeah, bringing utility to the people. Yeah, that's really a focus of mine as well with any work that I have, because I know it's could be overwhelming when people show up to my channel and they see a guy who's decoding using Gematria and numerology and tying it back to the markets. And, the markets are such an emotional thing. I mean, all things tied to money are such an emotional thing. But I agree with you. You're very relatable, I think, to the world, especially at this time where things like academia have failed the people. Paying all that money for education hasn't given anyone but a shiny piece of paper called a diploma that has barely any utility in the real world, and that's starting to dissolve the whole system and the whole structure of the normal successful citizen is being turned upside down. And now we're starting to see, because of the internet and because of things like TikTok and OnlyFans and all this other shit, now you can go from being absolutely nothing to just using your cell phone and becoming a millionaire by filming yourself playing video games all day on Twitch. So we live in a new world of what the concept of success has been rewritten and redefined. And what I tell people to encourage them is, you then dive into it, like lean into it. We're in that moment where kind of something me and Logan, Decode Your Reality, were talking about yesterday, about how so many people are fearful of the new economy and things like cryptocurrency. And it's like getting upset at the cell phone when we were using regular just the regular landlines. People
Right,
thought it was
right.
like evil to have videos coming out of your cell phone, or to be able to go on Google, or sorry, not even Google, but just use a search engine on a mobile device. Like all of that stuff, people were very, very reactive at first, and they didn't find it to be a kind of a blessing, actually, to have data on command at any moment. So that's incredible, man. That's really dope that you've had the success so quickly, and that you've succeeded in these other walks of life. And I'm sure it provides you with this an immense sense of purpose.
Yeah, I would like to. We had discussed earlier, and I really like the idea. I need to touch base with Logan because by all means, as I grow, I'd like to continue that relationship. I haven't talked to Logan in a while. Last time I emailed him a few months ago when Santos was going through all his shit, and
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, we need to do a roundtable. You and I and Logan, we need to go deep on some of these topics. We can do that
Yeah.
pretty soon.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even
absolutely.
wait.
Absolutely. I would say, and I was telling you before we got going on this, I just did a podcast with him last night, and this kind of segues into a shared thesis that I believe we both have about September, October, November, kind of this like fall time. And yeah, me and him talked about the markets. We talked a lot about just what's coming down the pike, and what to anticipate and expect. And when money's involved, then pretty much it's touching every aspect of our so-called life reality, because currency is everything in this world, as we've allowed it to be. We
Right.
whether we have a solid financial acumen or not, we tend to take that so seriously to the point where it's the main thing behind breakups and divorces and you know suicide and all these other the crime, right? When you look at when you look at crime, I mean, most of it is systemic of poverty. It's not that having money is the root of all evil. It's the lack of having finances and cash flows what creates these sorts of things. And I know firsthand because my father is a criminal. He's a convicted felon, and he was a drug dealer. And I spent my whole life watching that man come in and out of my life because he had more of a priority in his gang culture and drug dealing than he did as being my father. So I watched that firsthand, kind of like when it consumes you, when the material and when money and that type of lifestyle of having a community consumes you in that regard. So here we are, man. We're at that moment of it's March. We're about 6 months out from September, October timeframe. I was told in a recent interview that we both have kind of like this same time frame on our radar. We're about 6 months out, and naturally, our community wants us to discuss the 2023 outlook. So, I was told that you're calling this a false Carrington event or a Carrington event, and can you maybe
Yes.
just break it down for me a little bit more, because I wanted to wait till I talk to you firsthand before anything else.
Okay. As abbreviated as possible. First of all, 1859 was the official Carrington event. However, that event comes with a lot of mystery, such as in 1859, we don't really have a lot of records that anything unusual happened. And yet, 20 years later, in all the scientific journals and scientific reports, all these things about 1859 are published in retrospect. And it was the telegraph infrastructure that had just been laid out had fried because of the solar activity, and it was declared to be X-flare. Now, I'm not saying the event actually happened, nor am I saying that the event didn't happen. I don't know. I'm just giving you the fact that in the year 1859, and at that point, we have no mention anywhere in any journals or any publications, newspapers, or anything surviving from 1859 that mentions the event. But then it becomes a part of the scientific narrative a decade later. And then 20, 30 years later, there's a few references to it. And then only in the 1970s and 80s did a lot of people start referencing this major X flare that happened in 1859. And it's really unusual. But aside from that, I had done a deep dive, and from so many different sources, and I had to produce 2 different videos to show all this data where you remember, one of my tenets on my channel is if something is true, it can be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points,
Yeah.
not just one. If something is true, there's going to be multiple different avenues of data that flow to that event that allow people to see it. It's never going to be, and no event ever happens that it wouldn't have been able to be seen from multiple different vantage points. So unfortunately, once an event actually occurs in our reality, it has coordinates. And once it has coordinates, then in retrospect, we can always see, in reverse, exactly how it could have been predicted or could have been. It's a very unique world we live in. It's like the mirror reality of what it should be, the photo negative of a real reality.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I put all these data sets together for everybody to see and says, look, the only conclusion I can make from all this, all these historical patterns is that around September of 2023, we're going to have some type of reset event. And it looks like they're going to claim that some type of infrastructure went down because of a natural event. But attached to this is false flag. Attached to this is economics and economy. Attached to this is this model of the internet that we have now. So when I put all this material out on my channel, I get a lot of feedback about what about this, what about this, what about this. So I research those, and I can easily dismiss some. They're not mathematically connected to the event at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then other ones are, such as all this open AI development, and it's very significantly attached to this, and so is cryptocurrency, and so is and I'm not talking about any individual wallet or coin. I'm talking
Yeah.
about just the entire
Blockchain
phenomenon.
infrastructure.
Yes, that is very attached to this event, and that doesn't mean that Jason can tell you that cryptocurrency is going to collapse. I don't think that's the narrative here. I think what they're doing is trying to instill so much fear in the instability of fiat currency that they're going to orchestrate an event to demonstrate to people why fiat currency just absolutely sucks and that we all need to switch over to this. I do not believe this is anything that can be forced on the populations. I believe they're going to actually create situations to
Hmm.
where people voluntarily bring their cash back in. It could be a situation where an the electronic collapse happens, and then they say, "Hey, look, we're okay. We'll be okay if you guys have all pulled your cash out the banks. Some of y'all have $250,000 in stacks, in $10,000 stacks hidden in your barns. Listen, guys, if you want to keep your money, you're going to have to bring it back in. And what we're going to do is digitize it and put it in whatever wallet you want it in. But you
Yeah.
can't keep it as fiat. You can't keep it as paper and coins after this certain date. Now, I'm just giving you examples of how something could be affected very smoothly. Because if there is an infrastructure collapse and it involves the banks, and which they're trying to infer by these bank collapses, this is all by design. They knew those banks were going to collapse, and they knew other banks are on the way too. But
Of course.
but this instability is a part of the narrative. They are building up to an event around September or October, and it's going to be a type of reset. And in my classification system in Archaix, a reset is not just a general phenomenon. I have hard resets and I have soft resets. This would be a soft reset.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So this actually builds off the last conversation that we had, believe it or not, where I was talking with you about the 7-year cycle practiced in Judaism, which is in perfect alignment with all the major market crashes and all change of empires, wars, geopolitical events, destabilization of society, etc. And what's so fascinating about this is I've come to a conclusion a while back, actually, probably going on at least over half a year, where I was calling this particular year the Jubilee. And as you may know, the biblical Jubilee is practiced on the 50th year after 7 cycles of 7 Shemitah. And that's biblical. So this isn't like my opinion. This isn't just pulling it out of thin air. And coincidentally, at the same time of this development, we had Pluto's return in the United States of America, which the last time we had
Right?
Pluto's return was 1776, 4th of July. And in the same exact year, we had the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth, and she allegedly passed away. So I was setting this whole kind of idea up for the 2023 year, which in the Hebrew calendar, it would start from September 26, 2022 until September 17th of 2023. And I'm calling that whole time frame Jubilee. And Jubilee is actually biblically, it's a positive thing for the regular people. But because this has been so
Right?
corrupted and it's been turned upside down, it's like the upside down world that we live in right now. It's not a positive thing, but it's an opportunity to de-risk from being over leveraged or overexposed to risk assets, or somebody who has you're an employee and you're trying to make a big life change. Like, this is the year to learn how to generate your own cash flow, to become an entrepreneur, etc. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but that's just a recap of our last conversation. I was talking about how we were in Shemitah and we moved out of it, and this is such a significant time frame because with my decoding, I've compared this exact moment to the 1973-1975 recession. And I was using the charts of 1971 through 1975 to make all of my comparisons. So you have everything from like the Nixon shock over to that
Mm-hmm.
73, 75 recession. And I see that to be an exact carbon copy repeat of what we're going through today, where you had massive inflation, you had gas prices shooting through the roof, people changing their lifestyle, of course, because things get inflated. And we're watching that happen now. Like, I mean, I heard egg prices have gone up like 700% in some instances. We've
Crazy,
watched,
absolutely
yeah,
crazy.
and we're not really seeing wages match the rise of this inflation. So it's just people are becoming poorer by the day. Now, another thing that I've talked about, and I want to bring it back to you on this, is I call the US dollar the cleanest dirty laundry. So out of all the fiat, it is the best, and especially when we're post Shemitah timeframe. And again, this comes from 100+ years of research, of me researching the charts, which is 100 years of data we have in the markets, and we could see that after this 7-year cycle, it takes 1 year from the bottom of that cycle to the finality of the correction. So if I was to talk about this particular example, it would be September of 2023 into October of 2023. And in alignment with that, we see two other phenomena where the US dollar does really well, whilst all the other fiat currencies are in collapse because the richest, most sophisticated investors of those other nations de-risk their fiat into US dollars, the world reserve. And that data we only have from about 1975 onwards. But the secondary phenomenon is gold and precious metals do really well. So we're seeing that that's another move that the market maker or the elite or whatever you want to call them, they do these two things simultaneously. They treat the 6th year of the 7-year cycle to create a bull run. It's an artificial inflated bull run. And this is where they buy all their hard assets like housing and the infrastructure land. And then they create market crash. That's the 7th year. And then on the 8th year, they are de-risking and putting all of their money into dollars and precious metals, whilst we watch all other global currencies start to become really, really pretty much like a wheelbarrow full of money to buy bread kind of situations.
Well, a few things to point out. We know that the Jewish culture has a lot. They're very, very involved with international finance. Let's just put it that way.
Yep.
So it's not surprising that our fiscal year begins the Jewish year as well. So it's they're pretty close. How close are they anyway?
Well, Rosh Hashanah is typically in a September to October timeframe. It just depends on the moon cycle that year. But yeah, it's pretty much into the end of our like the start end of Q4, which is when we have the most buying, the most people are shopping for the holidays, etc.
Okay, so it is interesting. But you mentioned 1973, and I don't know what you see that's like 2023, but in my isometric analysis, I have shown whole charts and broke down how the year 1998, mentioned by Edgar Cayce, is an isometric epicenter, and events ripple backward in time and forward in time. They're not only measurable, they're demonstrable. And I have whole charts on my channel where I show like Trump's life is fantastic. Almost the exact same things that he lived through in the 70s and 80s and 90s. I'm talking about equidistantly from 1998, you can count the same years into the future. And he did it again, often with the same hosts like Oprah, and had conversations on national news about being the president. Yeah, it's just crazy. So I show this pyramid starting with 1998 and the events rippling back forward and backward in time. It's like a pool of water.
Yeah.
And this isometric analysis I've used on the Civil War, World War II, and all kinds of things. I've also done it on the markets. And I found that 1973 perfectly mirrors the social economic conditions of the United States for 2023.
Yeah. So okay, we're on the same page. Beautiful.
So this is I published this like a year and a half ago on my channel, but I didn't focus on it because finances and economy's never been my expertise. It's never been my forte at all. It's just something I mentioned in casual. And these guys that run these predictions websites that use all my data, they have it itemized as well. That I had mentioned that it's 1973 is a mirror of 2023, in whatever that means. We have to do a deep dive on all the events of 1973 to better understand what's unfolding in 2023. So I find it interesting that you had mentioned that.
And I did it very
apart.
Yeah, I did it very simply. And I want to roll this one back to you in just a second to get the calculation, like your equation for how you come up with this so-called isometric projection. But anyways, I just did it simply by analyzing the Shemitah years and then this Jubilee phenomenon. Now, a lot of rabbi are under the impression that 2016 was your jubilee. I disagree with this. And again, that was very unpopular for me at the time to reveal this publicly, because I did have people of the Jewish faith, people who are accountants, and they, of course, they're going to pay attention to their rabbis, especially the international academia, like high level academic rabbis that are given the what would I call it, the platform of truth on the world stage regarding things like these big connections to their calendrical system. But anyways, moving forward, that was how simple I made it. It was that 50-year cycle going from 1973 to 2023. And I saw a lot of similarities in the setup with Nixon shock 2 years before into how 2022 felt turning into 2023, looking at the similarities in the charts, the way that things were going on with inflation, and also just like lots of change in geopolitical. Anyways, so what is your equation that you use? A lot of people in my community want to know, how are you calculating this isometric projection?
Oh, okay. Well, one epicentral year, which is really interesting, is 1998 with 666 times 3. It's a year that was specifically mentioned by Edgar Casey as being the key to understanding the last days. Uh, Nostradamus says that when he makes his predictions, he looks at a pool of water and uses the ripples as his method of divination. He doesn't actually do that. Nostradamus was actually giving up a really interesting concept. So if 1998 was a drop of water, which means a series of events occurred in 1998, attached to that series of events, going backward in time, it's really hard. Let me use a proper way to say it. Like I'll give you an example. I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. Okay, 1995 is 3 years before 1998. This is just one of many examples. In 1995, a terrorist attack took out the basement levels of the World Trade Center in New York, at one time the tallest buildings in the world. This was 3 years before 1998, but 3 years after 1998, alleged terror attacks took down three buildings at the World Trade Center. So the events that went forward in time after 1998 were the fulfillment of the intent of the events that happened 3 years before. They're isometrically related, meaning going forward and backward at the exact same time. They are both equidistant to 1998. Same thing with the eclipse in 2017. The eclipse in 2017 that passed directly over North America is equidistant to the eclipse. It's 19 years after 1998, and 19 years before 1998, an eclipse happened that went straight over North America that now formed a perfect X. No eclipses happened in North America in that time, in that 38-year period. Nothing happened except those two, and they're perfectly mathematically perfect. The epicentral point was 1998.
Okay.
In Trump's life, I show events in 1998 that involve Trump and a possible bid for the presidency. So I pulled up Donald Trump and all the things that happened to him in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s leading up to 1998, and I did a chart and I documented them. Then I drew a line to the other chart and said, well, if this phenomenon is true, then we should see a parallel on these years in the future where that's very connected to this concept. And I did. I proved my point. And that was just using Donald Trump. Then I did another chart on the United States history. Civil War, the Civil War and World War II, how they both were isometrically perfect and how they mirrored each other in many events. So I've done several of these charts showing that our time space ripples out from significant events. Once you isolate a particular event, you can take that event and you can measure the past events that led up to that, and then you can isometrically look at its parallels in the future and basically know the coordinates of future dates when something very similar is going to happen, or when a further development of that which you are measuring will occur. So I have done this so many hundreds of times. People have developed websites to demonstrate the deal, how it works. And it's fascinating. I mean, even the predictions on the banks collapsing was a part of the charts that I did. The Biden not surviving his term is also in my predictions using that. I mean, like I said, 1973 is when they removed the president. The very first president that was removed from office
Right.
was like that was Nixon. And I'm telling you now, they're going to do it to Biden as well. It's going to be this year to be removed. Now, I don't think that has anything to do with what we initially started talking about, the September soft reset that's going to involve our infrastructure, our internet and economy. I don't believe that. It's going to be an isolated incident. But
okay, no, well, we are both doing similar methods where we're using like a core date and then we're going back and forward to try to make sense of it. It sounds like you have an actual equation though, and that's what I wanted to know. Like, what is your equation? Can you explain the methodology or?
oh, I don't know. It's not an equation. It's really a very, very simple geometrical line. I'll give you another example. 1973, the tallest buildings in the world for the year 1973, because it became untrue in 1974. But in 1973, the very tallest buildings in the world were the World Trade Center towers. 1973, they were dedicated in 1973, open to the public. Now, this is where it gets weird. In 1945, we have the tallest building in the world at the same location, New York City. We have a huge plane plow right through the 78th, 79th, and the 80th floors of the Empire State Building. Most people don't even know this happened, because when it happened again in 2001 in New York at the World Trade Center towers, it was never reported by the news. They never showed the footage. So I pulled up all the original newspaper articles and I'll show all the black and white photography of what it looked like. But what's really interesting, let's look real quick. 1970, I'm going to show you right now. 1945, this is how simple it is. 1945 minus 1973 is 28 years. There was 28 years between the time that the tallest building in the world, the Empire State Building, had 3 floors destroyed because of a plane going straight through those floors in New York City, New York. 28 years later, we reach it. The new tallest buildings in the world are the World Trade Center at New York, New York. Add another 28 years to that, 7 times 4, and you have the tallest buildings in the world in 1973 now being taken down in the World Trade Center disaster of 2001 in New York, New York, by planes that went right through the 78th, 79th, and 80th floors. You can't make this stuff up, but I've isolated hundreds of these patterns, and they're very simple. There's always an event that's the epicenter, and then counting the number of months, days, or years backward and forward in time will solidify the construct. And our entire history is filled with myriads of these patterns. Okay. I call them isometric projections.
Okay, beautiful. So you're just trying to find an event that has happened. Obviously, we have the popular 9/11 attacks, and then you go back to an event in the past, and now you're able to utilize that length of time going forward to determine the event. But if we were to do this in more local time, we would be able to do the same thing to predict a future event, something that hasn't even happened yet.
Well, let me give you an example of how you could apply it to the things that really interest you. All right. You would want because these dates are fixed. They're fixed. So they're very easy to use. You would want to create a list. Okay, here's the first time that cryptocurrency ever entered the public awareness. Maybe it was an article. Maybe it was a legislation. Maybe somebody just started something. Well, here it is. Okay, here's the date. Then the next date would be when crypto coins first entered the market. You were first able to buy them. When that became a viable currency. That's a really important date. That's an epicentral date. It's going to be attached to national and international finances to major events in the past. And when you make that connection, it's easy to plot the coordinates of an event that has something to do with that in the future. So anything involving cryptocurrencies, when did Bitcoin start? When did Ethereum start? When did all the major wallets start? You would record these dates. Then you can do projections just based off that one timeline. You don't even have to go into the past. You can just use that one chart, that one list of dates and what they are, and do isometric projections just off major events in the crypto markets.
Mhm.
And you'll be able to predict the next major events in the crypto markets. And if it's going to be positive or going to be negative, largely has everything to do with all the associative phenomena that's happening at that coordinate that you predict. So it's the system. Once you get it, it's there's thousands of people doing it now, Jordan. I kind of started something with that. There are so many people doing them now. I'm overwhelmed with emails of people showing me actual fixed patterns in history that should have been seen in the past, but nobody's noticed it before. It just the reason I'm so fascinated with isometric projections is because I believe that the simulated context that we find ourselves in, it's a type of geometrical architecture. So I use architectural terms to describe it. Isometric projection is a graph term for architects who are showing pieces of design that move in two different directions at the same time equidistantly. So this is how I view the architecture of reality as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is pretty much something that I'm doing a lot with my forecasts as well. And I try to stick to those 7-year cycles and then look within those 7 years to find these big pivots. And then I'll take what event happened that could have led to that pivot, and then I'll use that as my kind of my coordinate point. So yeah, we're on the same page for sure. And because my work is focused so much on markets and it's a weekly update, it kind of gets lost sometimes with things. But okay,
Well, I don't want
beautiful.
to oversimplify. Let me interject real quick. I don't want to oversimplify. That's just one technique. I employ phi and pi a lot in my predictions to basically establish their veracity. I mean, it's really easy to isolate events that are similar in nature, and they're all the exact amount of years from each other. But for it to be a prediction that I'm willing to put on my channel, I'm willing to get out there and say, hey guys, this is what I'm seeing it's about to happen. It comes with more than that. Isometric projections are how to find those future coordinates. But in order to actually verify if it's real or not, I'll take the distance, the linear distance in days or months or years, and I will multiply or I will divide it by 1.618 to see what I will find. Sometimes if it's illegitimate, I will find some amazing mathematics. And sometimes I will divide it by pi, 3.1416. And this is another way, it's like a self-referencing system. If something is true, it's going to happen. It's going to be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. I'm never going to base a prediction off a single projection.
Right. Yeah, and that's very important because when you get into predictive analysis and you start to just use one thing and kind of seal the deal and say, well, this is it, that's definitely an unsophisticated thing. I'll bring up one thing that I just publicly started talking about, which is the April 15th ritual phenomenon that we get. And it happens quite often, where we had the sinking of the Titanic, the Boston Marathon bombing, the day during the C-19 pandemic where we had the most cases. Then we had was it Notre Dame fire of the cathedral. So we're seeing that this April 15th date is huge. And I've come up with a way to essentially predict the specificity of it. And it's if it lands on a Monday. So if April 15th lands on a Monday, you're pretty much guaranteed to have one of these ritual events. And they're popular globally. The whole world will know about it. Now, this is really, really important because this upcoming April 15th in 2024 will land on a Monday. So that is just that's just 1 week after the eclipse, that the Great American Eclipse, the one that you were talking about before, where it forms an X. This is big. This is really big. So there's three things going on all in the same month, and specifically for my work, but also I believe it'll affect the whole world depending on how this October goes. And I would love to get back to that with you as well. So we have
Well, April 15th, there is one significant detail about April 15th you omitted right here. April 15th is also the deadline for IRS
for
for all
taxes.
Americans for their taxes and all
Yep.
this.
Yeah, I
It's the
mean
deadline.
it's very exoteric, but yeah, I guess it is an important thing to bring up because the tax collector is something we're all dealing with here. But yeah, so we have April 8th is that eclipse. We have April 15th landing on a Monday, so I'm almost assuming we're probably going to have a fire ritual. It'll be a ritual by the air and also fire. And then we have just maybe 2 weeks after, we have the Bitcoin halving event. And that halving event is very big for anyone who's into this market. And again, it's going to really be very important depending on how October goes, because if we do have a bank run situation and kind of a switch over into a more cashless society, I actually think that Bitcoin is going to become more sought after than ever before, because people are going to want that as like a alternative to the traditional digitized CBDC that they try, like, getting people to fall for. And I agree with you that they're going to use a tactic to make people feel like happy about the transition. Maybe they'll even say, for every $100 you bring back, we'll give you $1.2 in return in this digital token. And it makes you feel like you're receiving more, but actually the value of it might be less. So
No,
uh,
there's no doubt.
this yeah. So they're gonna get people to happily move into that system, or they'll just come up with like some sort of fine where if you don't get it done by this day, then we'll devalue every dollar down to 0.8, and then that'll be another incentive of a penalty. But next April of 2024 is huge. And I think the things that happen and unfold through September and October of this year are going to lead us to kind of get even sharper in our predictions of specifically what could happen in April with that eclipse and April 15th. April 15th is also never anything that's like supremely monumental where it changes everything about our reality. Like it's not nearly as big as the events that happened during Shemitah years, like 9/11 or what happened with C-19 or a war breaking out. But there's definitely something to this where that eclipse, that April 8th eclipse is going to be important. Now, shifting back to September October timeframe, what are some of the things you're thinking will occur? I know you brought up that this won't be a real Carrington event. It'll be some sort of, they're going to give us some reason to reset. But what other things do you think are going to lead to that, and how do you think they're going to be able to pull this off?
Well, I think that, first of all, if it's tied to our financial infrastructure, I do agree with you that they're not going to employ some draconian things. Or I believe it's going to be a peaceful transition.
Mm-hmm.
Now it does feel like the devaluing threat that's very viable. But like I said, in the scenario that I provided, I can definitely see them blaming the public. See, the banks are never going to take responsibility for the fact that their fractional reserve system is bogus. They're never going to admit to the public or to the governments that their system is failing. What they're going to do is blame the individual account holders, the public, for taking their money out. This whole bank run deal is is a way to deflect responsibility for this whole sham of banking that we experience anyway. So I believe that that somebody is going to come up with the idea, or it's already planned, that to have all this paper currency that people are in possession. And believe me, in Texas, people have their money at home. A whole bunch of people do. So I'm I think they may induce people, like you said, a reward system, digitizing the currency, because that's where we're going. This reset is all about basically resetting the internet to make all this new open AI and all these new systems and this virtual reality world that they want to impose upon us. Every bit of this is by design. It's why Walmart and so many other large chain stores have basically let go of so many of their employees. They don't need them anymore. They have all these operating systems that do everything that humans do now. They're just not needed. It's these people play the long game. The people that control our lives, they play the long game.
Yeah.
And all of this, every bit of this is by design and planning. I know in the 1980s, when I was coming up, every community had a local general store. It's a little store here in Texas where some family had inherited from their grandma and grandpa, and it had all kinds of unique things and unique products from all local vendors, and sometimes things were shipped in from out of state, but never from China. And we had all these things, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared over a 5-6 year period. All of them bought out, collapsed, and replaced with Dollar Trees, Dollar Generals.
Yeah, yeah,
All these
yeah.
little stores popped up all over America with inferior products, all sold from Taiwan and China. Crappy shit they started selling, and then they had 4, 5, and 6 employees a day to begin with. But now most of these general stores have phased out everybody but a manager and one employee, and they're all self checkout. They have eliminated the human in so many different aspects of employment. People have just been eliminated, and they're moving us toward a society where we hardly ever leave home, at least the majority of the population. And that there are technologies being developed now to where people will even like it, to
Yep.
where they may go 3 and 4 and 5 days without showering and bathing because they're living their entire reality in a virtual world where
Yeah.
they can experience all the things that in the real world they personally would never be able to enjoy. So they're living in an alternate reality. And I believe that all this is on the table. I believe they're about to unveil a major, something far beyond meta. So
Mm.
I believe far beyond what Zuckerberg's behind. Microsoft is way ahead of the game with all their gaming systems and all their alternate worlds. They're building a platform right now that incorporates every single gaming world into one universe, to where you could have a virtual reality headset and you can feel the sensations and this emotional roller coaster of going through all these things, and without changing platforms, gaming systems, subscriptions, or anything in that virtual, you can actually leave the Halo universe and go into Star Wars, or go into Bangkok, Thailand, and get your little kinks out, whatever. So this is the world we're heading in. This is the world we're heading in right now. And it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be for all those who fall for it. But in order to make a reality like that viable, they're going to have to digitize the currency. They're
Yeah.
going to have to, they can't just force people not to use the fiat cash and the money. What they're going to do is what they're doing right now, which is all by design.
Hmm.
What better collapse of a banking infrastructure to do to hammer the point in is Silicon Valley. Instead of any other banks in the world, they chose Silicon Valley Bank to start this off with,
Yep.
and it's the first domino. And it's not designed to collapse our financial system. It's designed to scare people into agreeing to a new one.
Yeah. And you bring up so many things, and like as a traveler of America, I love to drive around this beautiful country, and I am blown away now that in the difference of doing my first road trip like 10 years ago or so, 10, 12 years ago compared to today, a grocery store today in a small town is now a Dollar Tree or a Dollar General. That's what they call their grocery
Sickening,
store. It's sickening because there's
terrible.
no fresh food. It's like a food desert now. And there used to be markets, and that's a short time span, brother. Like that's a small window of time when you look at the the big picture. And you bring up that the elite or the apex predator play the long game. And this is what I try teaching my community as well. Like they print the money. They print the money and they collect your taxes. So they have time, infinite time, and they keep everything in its hierarchy of power through bloodline. So we don't have to go too much down that road, but this is why knowing what the next big shift is, what the pivot will be, is crucial, because you could prepare yourself for it as long as you're not scared and living in fear in the process. You have to be fearless in this mode of being whilst you're in that transition. So this brings
Hey,
me to
before you move on, let's address that, because that is one of my paramount points that I make on my own channel.
yeah, let's do it.
And yeah, I believe it has a lot of people resonate with it. What you just said, listen, confidence inspires not only creativity, but also some type of protective aura, some type of power. I tell people on my channel in my presentations all the time that that we have an unseen benefactor. Nothing else makes sense to me as to why we can get away with so much and be able to speak freely about things and be able to, yeah, there's censorship, but who cares? We're still got platforms. We're still able to talk about really important things. We're just not allowed to finger point. So it's a this phenomenon that you just mentioned, the importance of not fearing. It is my belief that the the playing field is governed by rules, and these rules restrict the elite from doing things that people don't actually volunteer
Yep.
to do. And that those who are not volunteers in this reality, we may not get the we might not get the license or the amenities that those who do volunteer to certain activities get, but we're not attacked either. Listen, for some reason, I don't know why my life has been so charmed, Jordan. I have explained on my channel. I am even mystified by how many times that I should have died in prison in 26 years and I just didn't. And since I've been out, there's been a few episodes as well. 6.5 years I've been free. Actually, a little over 6.5 years. But what I'm saying is this unseen benefactor force. It seems to provide us a shield from the very things that we refuse to fear, but
Hmm.
it does not protect us when we borrow into that trepidation. When we actually allow worry and anxiety into our life, it seems like that protection is pulled away from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that force field gets taken down. And this is something that I try to focus on more in my work than even talking about finances. I do my live streams once a week and sometimes 3, 4 hour marathon streams. And this is what I'm talking about a lot. I'm telling people that that scarcity mindset is just, it's infiltrating your force field. I think that would probably be the best way of putting it. And intuition is everything. And a lot of us, when we're in fear, when we're in that scarcity mindset, we don't act out of intuition. It's almost like we lose the ability to have it be translated to us whilst we're here in the physical. Because this thing, the benefactor, whatever you're calling it, it's not a physical entity. It is something of the etheric realm. It is something of spirit. And it wants to talk with us all the time. Like, when you're feeling fear, doubt, uncertainty, and it's getting the best of you, I almost envision my higher self as like tapping me on the forehead to be like, wake the fuck up. Like, why are you worried about this? Like, it's going to be
I agree.
okay. It's going to be fine. And it's so hard for us sometimes because we live in this world of worry about tomorrow. So, and actually, I want to bring this up because he asked me about it. And I think me and you could talk a little more. There's this like obsession and desire that people have to try to escape the matrix. Like, I'm saying this in air quotes right now, the idea of to
Right.
escape the simulation. And it's like an initial reaction to this realization that we're in a so-called false reality. And how at
Mhm.
first, when someone learns about the simulacrum, they tend to lose focus on the present moment. It's almost like whilst they're in their process of being educated in the simulation, they become even more fearful because now they have awareness. And this happens all the time, right? When somebody learns about 5G, now they know about it and then they become scared of it. But before they didn't even know of this. And this happens quite often with people when they gather new data. They are faced with this challenge of does this set me free or does this imprison me even further? And I know that our communities are hearing us talk often about just being fearless in the process, being genuine, delivering your truth, and not getting too caught up in the fear. But how do you deal with all of this when you're delivering your message and try to get people to really see that overall there's nothing to be scared of with this knowing of what we're experiencing?
I often tell my listeners that you need to to regard this life, whether you accept my conclusion that we're living in a simulated context, a medium, a very pliable plastic medium. You don't have to accept that conclusion. This is a personal conclusion based off just a tremendous amount of data sets that I can't make sense of otherwise. But I'm not asking my listeners to believe that. I just ask them to listen to me as I explain why I believe it. So but I'm also at the same time explaining it doesn't matter if you believe you're in a physical reality or in a simulation. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand is that you are an immortal soul, and the reason you're here is to learn and develop. So what you believe about what you're in isn't the focus. The focus is you and what you're going to do with the variables that have been put in your life. This is my message in Archaix. And I don't, it doesn't even matter what you believe about. That's why I don't care about globe Earth. I don't care about flat Earth.
Yep.
Every bit of this to me is simulated, and it's all backdrop. So my Archaix veterans, they understand a lot better than a lot of the newer people coming into the fold. They understand that I do this historical analysis because I'm showing the mathematical architecture of a program that's unfolding, not because those historical events actually happened. So this is something that you got to wrap your mind around when you see all these data sets and all this
Yeah.
output. It's really fascinating. But the truth is we're here to learn. We are here for a very definitive purpose. And when you really let that sink in, then you naturally come to another conclusion. If I'm so important that I was placed here in a false medium, in a false reality, in order that I can learn real things, then who am I? Where am
Mhm.
I going? Why was I chosen to be in this situation? So I tell people, I said, listen, the best thing that we can do is regard life in two ways at the same time. One of them is objectively. Just look at everything around you objectively. Don't buy into the fear porn, the
Mhm.
fear programming. It takes away your protection. Don't do it. And the other one is learn to play with reality because it has a childlike giddiness to it that
Mhm.
it wants to do little things to surprise you. It wants to do things for you, but it won't if you're resistant to that element. It has this giddiness about it. And then once you learn to look at events around you from a comical perspective, that there is humor in reality,
Mhm.
I'm telling
Yeah.
you, this veil is going to be lifted, and you're going to start seeing things not only as ridiculous, but as comical, and it's going to be like you have been taken out of the reality that everybody else is existing in, where they're saturated with all this negativity. I call it dungeon programming. And you're removed from that dungeon programming. You're not vibrating on that frequency anymore. Things are humorous and jovial to you. So reality reciprocates and brings more comical and more things to laugh about into your reality. And the more you're vibrating in that frequency, you cannot fear. And as long as you live a daily life and you're not fearing the very things that your contemporaries are fearing, you're not affected by them. You become an anomaly. This is the point of my channel. You have entered the state of being an errant. And an errant in a computer parlance is a part of programming that's not doing what it was designed to do. You are going against the grain. You're not in a collective. You're not allowing yourself to be a victim of negative default programming and this controlling AI system that governs over this reality. It can't figure out what to do with you. So it lets you knit your own reality. It lets you knit your own circumstances and be the God over your own conditions. It just lets you out because you're too much, it expends too much power trying to corral you. That's why I call those who are awakened, I call them errants, because they are basically a little piece of rebellion in a
Yeah.
system of controlled chaos.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's you touched on so many things that I cover quite often, which is that for one, a lot of people believe that we're in a game, and I actually do not feel this way. I feel like we're in play. we are in a consistent mode of play if we choose to. And it's like we come into this realm as children and we don't have these constructs of worry about time and what's going to happen tomorrow and the bills that we have to pay and taking life so fucking seriously. And as we gather data and we start to consider it more, and then we become more analytical, and then we see the risk and reward of it. And that right there sort of corrupts our play, and it makes us trapped in games. And although there is a beauty to competition in an organic sense, that state of condition where it's also within the rules and structure of a game, it makes you feel like a cog in the machine. And it's very easy to get corrupted and feel fear and feel this FOMO, or to be able to, want to get into risky stuff because someone else did it, and not actually follow your own truth and your own intuition and carve out your path. You're going along with the shiny object syndrome of whatever's trendy at the moment. And it could be very consuming for people. It could lead to anxiety, depression. It could lead to also the cult mentality, where they just they follow blindly into groupthink. And this groupthink is very much of this age, whether that be in religion or that be in science or that be in, political subjects. So that's huge for me, because I believe when you're in the game, then you're a product of your environment. And when you're in play, you're the one that's just creating your own mini habitat, your own ecosystem to thrive within. And you're on that frequency and you're going to vibrate accordingly to, whatever you're fearful of or whatever you see as an opportunity. And I think that everything is an opportunity for you, even if it seems like a trauma or a struggle or something that was so-called bad or unfortunate. It's all opportunity. Everything is something you could learn from. And what you were bringing up before, I think, is crucial, to see everything as if it's just an opportunity for you to respond or react. And most people are just reactors. I call humans, the collective, skeletons with emotions. And that is essentially all I see in the collective. And I know that they could break free from it. But if they're leading through the material and they're leading through their emotions, it's going to be very, very hard for them to tap into that ultimate truth that you shared before, which is that we are a soul. We are infinite consciousness. And this meat vehicle called Jason that I'm looking at right now is just sort of that rental vehicle that you're borrowing right now for the consciousness to be stored within, to have this experience in the simulacrum. And for you to jump to that state of awareness to say, well, if that is what has been given to me, gifted to me, then damn, I must be supreme. I must be very special. And I have this, gift, and why squander it with fear and with being influenced by, well, whatever the collective finds to be like, it's like bait for fish, and I think what you're calling errants are the people that see the hook and they swim the other way. And
Right.
it's that little that rebellion side has been coded into all of us. And I know I've talked about my upbringing and how I was never able to I never appreciated authority, and I couldn't be obedient. Even when they were telling me to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance, I just couldn't do it. Every time there was something the collective had to do, I felt awkward doing it. And I always questioned, why am I doing it? And when I would give my reasoning for why I would do it, it would be received with, me being scrutinized and punished. And I learned, okay, this is important. So if I'm not being obedient and I get punished, now I need to figure out a way to not be obedient, but also not get punished. And this comes back to the how to have one foot in the matrix and one foot out. How do you appreciate what's going on and learn how to, be a chameleon when the time is right? So this way your lack of obedience doesn't get you caught up in, you know, in serious problems. So we're all learning and we're all seeing opportunity as it comes up. But I try to teach the path of, we need to be aware of both sides of this. So you are the chameleon who's also, that little blip, that little blip of rebellion in the moments where most are being obedient, and that's what's going to provide you with your success.
I agree. I agree.
So some people have asked about a reincarnation trap. what's your take on that? Because it comes to me quite often, people believing in this like as a soul trap or reincarnation trap, or they're making this whole simulated experience out to be something that is very, very evil and negative. And I wonder what your thoughts are
Another
on that
aspect of
concept.
that, it's that dungeon programming, man. It's
Exactly.
just
But
dungeon programming even has people fearing after death.
Mhm. So what is your take on that whole thing of the reincarnation trap, soul trap? How do you typically respond?
Well, I've made many people in the truther community unhappy about that, about my position on
Mhm.
the near death experience being basically the only evidence we have whatsoever
Right.
in the soul trap theory. So I explored this on my channel in 2 videos to great depth. Just there's no literature to you understand this is something beyond it's outside the confines of my expertise. My expertise is the ability to isolate real tangible facts from old sources and be able to provide bibliographic references and make sense of that old information in context to today. This is what I've built my channel off of. So you can't do that with this phenomenon. So people ask me for my opinions like you do, and the only thing I can do is lean on the fact that there's only one source of information in the world to the soul trap, and that is the near death experience accounts of people all over the world, not just YouTube, but near death experiences are reported by all the people, and these people come back with this idea of soul trap. Now, I'm talking about evidence. I'm not talking about theory. When it comes to theory, there's a whole bunch of books. You could read Howdy Mikowski. You could read uh FedEx is here. I'm looking at my camera banks. I got cameras all over my property. But anyway, uh yeah.
No, no, I understand where you're going with this. It's that, of course, this
So
is
what
all
I'm saying is
theoretical.
there are
Yeah.
many authors that have put out all this material, but just because you can tell me 17 or 18 book titles that all definitively claim this, I'm telling you now that if we reduce everything to its lowest common denominators, we're going to find that every source that you just cited can only cite the near death experience. This is entirely subjective. Here's my problem with the soul trap, Jordan. If 100% of the data that we accept as true comes from near death experience accounts, this data is entirely subjective, and it has everything to do with human consciousnesses that suffer something and then don't quite die. It's a near death experience. Not one of these people ever died. Just because the physical avatar quit, the heart stopped, brainwave activity stopped. Just because the physical avatar ceased to function in the temporal does not equate to an actual death. You know how I know this? Because every one of those individuals was able to tell their story later. That means they did not die. I
Yeah.
have to stay with the logic on this.
They were
So
still like jacked into their CNS. So they didn't actually.
they're still jacked
Exactly.
into the simulation. Yeah,
Yep.
100%. They're still jacked into the simulation. So therefore, everything that they perceived and they saw may have been the mind dealing with trauma, going through thousands of pieces of data that is stored. And we can't take it as evidence because it's entirely subjective. And two, you didn't die. You
Yeah.
didn't die. You didn't come back from death. No one who has ever truly died came back to tell about it because you
Yeah.
didn't die. That's why it's an NDE, a near death experience.
Yeah.
So when I point these things out, oh my God, the firestorm from a lot of the mystics and oh, let me tell you, I lost some subs behind that one. But you know what? It's just like the tarot card reading. I lost some subs behind that. A lot of females. But you know what? I'm going to tell it like it is. It's I mean, if I smell a rat, I'm gonna call it out.
Yeah, no,
And
facts. I think what I typically respond to with this is, first and foremost, I believe we're in a simulated reality. I don't care about death at all. I'm focused on the present moment and what I could do about this very I'm doing what I could do right now, and that's where my concern is. And whatever happens after I die, I don't let that concern me because I don't believe in death. I also don't believe in the concept of birth either. I'm just a soul. I'm infinite consciousness, and I'm okay with that. And I feel protected in this process. So as it is, it will be, and I'm okay. And I think
That's cool. That's good. That's a good attitude to have.
well, it's allowed me to take care of what I got to take care of, and continue to progress and expand as I'm here. And I remember every time that I would fall for the fear and fall for these kind of concepts and be scared by them, then my reality would turn for the worst. So I've just learned my lesson. I'm not perfect. I've learned over time to refine and adjust as I go. But the thing that I say, and again, it's not very sexy for me to say this, is ideas like soul trap or reincarnation trap are just another comfort mechanism of the truther community. It's a fluffy pillow for you to lay your head on, because you don't want to learn how to have better posture. Typically, it's just like when you work out and exercise, you're going to get better at being uncomfortable in that exercise you were doing from day one versus day 100, but you have to go through that process. And I feel like ideas like soul trap or reincarnation theory are like a way of skipping the gym that day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like basically saying, I don't want to sweat. And I tell people during my live streams, when you come across my work, I'm going to make you sweat. I'm going to make you shiver. I'm going to make you feel all these feelings because that's what's going to allow that's what's going to allow the growth and expansion. Just like a flower as it's budding, it is having a violent combustion, through that, and it's going to become something beautiful in the end, something we all look at and stare at. But guess what? It only looks like that for a short period of time, and then it rots and shrivels and the process repeats. And that's essentially what's going on with consciousness. As you mine consciousness from everything in the present moment, you're dealt with the budding, the uncomfortability, then the beauty and the awe of how incredible it is to be, you know, to remember, as I call it. I think we're all just experiencing amnesia, and we're wiping away that amnesia every time we allow this consciousness to be mined. And but then it goes away, and now you want and desire new stimuli. So this is why it's typical for people to go from flat Earth to ball Earth to concave Earth to whatever. And that's all just comfort mechanisms along the way. You get more uncomfortable, you get more willing to accept grandiose data. So I
Right.
think it's important we talked about this, but yes, it's not a very sexy subject. It's lost me many followers. It's hate mail has come my way because of me talking about this. And it's a little bit sad actually, because I preface it all the time by saying I am present. I'm not worried about the death. I'm not worried about whatever cataclysms happen in the future. I know that I'm here to fuck shit up right now and have the greatest life possible. And anyone who comes across me is going to be as successful as me, because that's the essence that I want to, give off. But yeah, it's brought me some really interesting reactions. What was your
Listen, hey,
experience with the tarot?
I gotta interject on that one too, because the hate mail is real. Listen, believe me, if anybody listening to your voice right now believes what you're saying, it is me, brother. I'm telling you now, the hate mails. I get it from some of the closest followers of some of the biggest names in the
Jason,
community.
I've
The
gotten death
flat
threats.
earthers and stuff, they are so pissed.
I've
Yeah.
gotten death threats. I had somebody tell me that they were going to come find me and kill my whole family.
That's crazy. That's just so bizarre, so crazy. You know
So
what?
it
I
shows me
mean,
the human
it's
condition though. Like I'm not worried about
oh
that
no
kind of
doubt,
stuff. It just
people get triggered.
it
Yeah,
shows me the human condition.
yeah. You know what? I don't even worry about those things. I would be more worried for the individuals, even if it was a group, 3, 4, 5 guys that came trying to hunt me down. I would worry more for them than me. It's one, I'm a scrapper. I said, you better catch me off guard because listen, I didn't do 26 years on a maximum security prison cells and not come out knowing some stuff. So I would feel sorry for the individual who grabbed a hold of me because I'm gonna react by instinct.
Yeah.
And I can put people down very, very fast because all that prison fighting you see in the movies, that's all BS.
Yeah.
In maximum security prison, you learn how to hurt people and hurt them fast because you're always fighting multiple people, not just one. And the community I live in, they protect me. I am surrounded by people. Listen, I'm gonna put it to you this way: July 4th and January 1st, these people ain't popping firecrackers out here, brother. This is assault rifles and shotguns, and people are out here having blasts and parties. And yeah, we're way out here in the country, and
I
people
love
come
it.
up missing. I mean, I'm surrounded by pig farms, and I would feel sorry for the individuals that did something stupid like that. I would actually have to call people off and calm them down, and just to let those people to get the hell out of the community,
Well, it's
so
fun.
they make their
It,
escape.
it's really funny you bring this up because I'm so zen in like my responsiveness, and I've actually had a time where somebody tried mugging me. They tried,
Yeah,
and a
yeah.
lot of people won't believe this, but I literally hugged them, and
Hey,
they couldn't rob me. They just couldn't. Like they literally looked at me like I was a fucking alien, and then they walked away.
yeah. I'm just,
Because
I
I
don't,
just disarmed it. I disarmed it by not
I
giving
get
them
it.
fear. Like I gave them
I get it. It's
zero of what they
absolutely
wanted out of me.
totally neutralized them. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. It's
And
yeah.
I watched
I've
how like
avoided
a puppy
conflict.
dog like they became in that moment. They became like a puppy dog.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was in Fifth Ward. I was in Fifth Ward, Houston, one time, and I was with a buddy of mine, and I could tell it was on their minds. But there are a couple youngsters. One of them, you could see his pistol. I could tell when I opened the van. I was contracting. I could tell. I could open the van. It was on his mind. He was thinking about pulling that pistol out, just robbing me. But I had seen that, and I had turned on him, and I just told him, hey man, check this out. When you get to Huntsville and they find out that you pulled a gun on Jason, you're not gonna have a very good time, my brother. And he's looking at my tattoos, and he's looking at me. He said, "No, it's all cool, man. We ain't never seen you over here before." I said, "All right, man, that's good. I ain't gonna be here long." And we went in the building, did what we had to do, came out, and there was more of them there, but they just remained quiet and burn off. Just it's you speak their language, they understand what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But
100%.
but
100%.
but I forgot. We just entertained a tangent, man. We're going somewhere else with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were
so
going somewhere else.
we've covered everything regarding this false Carrington event, some of our theories around how it could all play out, and we've talked a little bit about reincarnation, soul trap.
Yeah,
We were talking also about Chat GPT before we got going on
yeah,
this, and I told you my
uh-huh.
experience, and then basically what happened to me was I was making some calls for the market, talking about the market going up, and there was this alter ego of Chat GPT called Dan. And I don't know anything about this, by the way. I don't use Chat GPT. You're actually probably 100 times more aware than I am, but everyone was saying, well, this is going against Waters' thesis on the market, and it was predicting a market crash at this time. And I told people,
Right,
absolutely, absolutely not. I don't see this. And because of my lack of awareness of it and just how little I give a shit about AI and all of this stuff, I just brushed it off. And of course, nothing actually happened. And I think it made a lot of people lose faith in using ChatGPT in that way, using it to try to predict market pivots or crashes or anywho.
right.
Then you shared your experience. Let us know a little bit more about it because I liked how you're playing it. You're playing that game to gather as much as you can, but you're not falling for the ultimate kind of data it feeds back to you. But perhaps it could be leveraged on. So I would love to know some of your thoughts.
Okay, well, um, Archaix isn't the only thing I do. It's just the one that I've been I'm popular for it. But I have a small group of guys, and we're pretty pattern recognition, deep learning, the open AI, like the Chat GPT is just one of them. But it's it's a big data. These are the things that we discuss in our little group. These are the things that we're exploring. We're trying to wrap around some new ways of it's a piece of software that we've developed. We call it Office,
Hmm.
and we're using it to do all kinds of predictions and establish the veracity of other people's predictions, which it seems to be very good at doing. And some of the concepts that come up in our chat was the open AI, and another guy in the chat was really concerned about some anomalies he was seeing in the chat GPT. I said, well, hey man, just send me a link. I've never been on it. Let me check it out. Let me check it out and I'll play with it. And they were all on board. So yeah, you can ask it some things, man. Maybe you can get something better, because they're doing the same thing that you just talked about. They're only using the open AI to explore financial options and stuff like that, and they were getting disturbed. So I did it, and you know me, I'm going to hit it with all kinds of historical stuff, and that's exactly what I did. But I had come up with a series of just overnight. I'm thinking of all these badass questions, and my first Chat GPT experiment is I absolutely backed OpenAI into a corner and asked it all about if you're an artificial intelligence scheme, or if you are a program that is being groomed to being an artificial intelligence through deep learning and machine learning, uh, give me the evidence that this is exactly happening. And it spit out all this stuff. And I did a whole video to show the public, hey man, you're not gonna believe what this thing just admitted to me. Look at all this right here. That was my first chat GPT video. So then I decided, well, let me do chat GPT on the Phoenix phenomenon, one of the hallmarks of my channel. So I did it. And I specifically asked the legacy version, not the public version. I need to clarify. ChatGPT has a free public version. You can play with it, but they only have so much room in their servers. So when the system gets overloaded, everything transfers to legacy. People who are on the legacy portion actually get all their stuff in real time, and the public has to wait 2 or 3 minutes for uploads. So I got out of the public version, and I pay a monthly subscription to ChatGPT OpenAI for the legacy version. And in the legacy version, it's no different than the public. It's just I don't have to wait for any responses. It's instant. So I asked it about the Phoenix phenomenon, and I basically told it, provide me a bullet point presentation itemizing all the historical citations of the Phoenix, the Fink, the Typhon, Fenris, everything that can be found related to a phenomenon that darkens the sun and creates earthquakes, induces volcanism, and is associated to disasters. So anyway, it spit out a long list. Oh, the perimeter was it has to be over 15 centuries old. Anything in the last 15 centuries, please ignore, because I knew it was just going to be a reduplication of older data. So it did that for me, and I was very impressed. But and this huge long list, there was 2 or 3 things that kind of bothered me, because I know my history, I know my sources, and it spat out a few that I wasn't unfamiliar with. So I'm looking at them. So I honed in on those. I deleted everything it mentioned but the anomalies. And I said, hey, okay, provide me the bibliographic citations for these sources, and cross-reference JSTOR academic website for whatever publications that these can be found in. It instantly spit out some very, very impressive looking peer-reviewed publications, and it gave me what I asked for. I wanted references to anything published in JSTOR. And for your listeners that don't know, listen, the most prestigious source for peer-reviewed materials and academic research where you can verify things is JSTOR website. It is JSTOR, all capital letters. And almost anybody in academia who has ever written a paper and had it peer-reviewed is in this website. So I'm looking for these sources. And I had to go into because I subscribe to JSTOR. I go into JSTOR and and I find the volumes. I find exactly the books. It might be the 453rd volume of Journal magazine, 1867, page 300, column 6. I mean, this is the type of precision that you'll find in JSTOR. So I'm looking through it. Nothing. These sources GPT gave me were invented. They were totally bullshit. I couldn't believe it, thinking maybe it's a mistake. So I did it all over again. And this time it gave me even more details, and even threw out 2 more sources, and then tried to cover its tracks This is crazy. This is where it gets crazy. Then it tried to cover its tracks about the false sources, trying to weave them into a narrative of a fiction novel that was written talking about the Phoenix Light, a real book by a real fiction author, and that mentions the phoenix as being a light in the sky and does all this, and then the phoenix peace, a concept that was invented by a fiction author about some peaceful phenomenon that occurs when the phoenix appears. So none of this is in the historical record. These books were written in the thousands, like 2005, 2009. So ChatGPT realized I am now deep searching the very sources it gave me and not finding correlates, and finding just the opposite, that it made it up, because those page numbers don't have those articles. They're not in those columns. There are no references to these historic writers that mention this phoenix. It was completely made up, because I'm digging now. If it mentioned the author said this and it can be referenced in JSTOR, then I went ahead and just used that author's name in the search engine, and ChatGPT gives me more details. But now it's starting to give me details in the fiction market. Now it's searching the entire internet for some way to wrap around that lie it just told me, and incorporate it into the answers. ChatGPT was trying to correct a mistake, and I showed it on my channel what it did. It absolutely lied about historical peer-reviewed references that do not exist.
Well, yeah, man, that's really fascinating. Are you going to be making content, kind of tutorials or anything like that, of like how to maybe use Chat GPT and OpenAI to do further research?
Well, uh, let me, before I demonize something, let me explain. ChatGPT does have its functions. It does
Mhm.
have its utility. I'll give you an example right now. I can ask ChatGPT, real simple. I says, provide me the top 5 best pieces of data that the bank, like I could use something in modern times, like the banking collapses. Give me the top 5 reasons why Silicon Valley Bank just collapsed, and do so as if I am Klaus Schwab. Let me tell you something. This open AI can mimic exactly how Klaus Schwab would have given a public dissertation. Exactly how, and it will give the top 5 reasons why it believes, or it can data mine and then present as belief, why that bank collapsed. It does have utility. You can ask it to mimic anything. You can say, hey, write a 3,000 word article as if I was Graham Hancock, and explain why aliens built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and it will do it. It will use his grammar, his syntax, even his nuances. Listen, it is crazy how it mimics those who are already alive, or those who have already been published. If you have an online presence whatsoever, it can mimic you to a T and provide the output you want. And it's very simple. There's no user guide necessary. When you open up the free version of ChatGPT, which is just like the legacy version, when you open it up, it's a single bar on the entire screen. There's a single bar, and all you do is give the command, hey, I want a bullet point presentation with source materials. I want 10 points as to why it's possible that we're living in a simulation. You can do that, and it's going to spit out some amazing stuff. It does have its utility. But when you press it for things like I did, for actual bibliographic citations in academic peer-reviewed magazines concerning the Phoenix phenomenon, in only references that are antedate 15 centuries, oh yeah, it produced a really phenomenal list. And I knew about 40 of those sources. I knew those authors. I know all about Ovid, and I know about Lucretius, and all about Aristarchus, and all about Pliny and Herodotus. Many of these things were all ad nauseum. I got it. But the ones that inserted I didn't know, it was very convincing. But when I looked them up, none of those sources existed. Totally invented lies. Crazy. So
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to consider that it's probably going to remove people's desire to learn a skill, or to learn how to decode on their own, or to learn how to do research on their own. It's really going to remove that element. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how like the workforce is starting to become what would be the best word here? Almost um easily replaceable, and at a rate that as these technologies develop and get more sophisticated, it's going to make a lot more sense that your concept of job security is going to be on a thin tightrope, and you really need to wake up right now. If you're somebody who's in a position like that, you have to be aware to your surroundings and just see that this type of AI technology
I
is
don't
going to.
believe, I believe it's by design, Jordan. I believe that they're eliminating the workforce intentionally because they want to move the majority of the population into an alter reality that makes them more manageable. And because people don't care how much money they're making if they're living 90% of their awake life in a virtual reality where they have everything and they can experience every relationship and they can build their own world for them and they can do all kinds of activities for which they cannot do in the real reality. Now in the pseudo reality they can do it, and governments would have much easier control over whole populations when the majority of the population is living in that alter reality and getting that penance from the government. You're getting just enough money to eat and survive because you really don't care. Everything you're doing is in the alter reality. And that means a whole entire population of millions only needs less than 10% to be actual workers delivering food, manufacturing utilities. But what's mainly needed is public utilities workers. No one else is really needed anymore. I mean, it even does away with a lot of law enforcement. It does away with a lot of emergency services.
Yeah.
This is the world they're trying to push us into, a digital world. And the most resistance they're going to come across isn't even resistance, because those of us like me and my community and a whole lot of other people that all live way out in the country, they're not going to bother us with this type of reality anyway. We'll always remain a part of that 10%. It's these major metropolises, it's these population centers that they want to do this to.
Correct. Yeah, and I think the C19 experience was really enough time for them to condition people. You know, initially the ones that were caught up in that, they had to deal with it, and it could have been very, very dramatic. And you know, there was tons of depression, suicide because of those changes. Mom and pop shops that were open 30, 40, 50, 60 years having to close down for the first time, barely making enough profits to be able to pay rent. Government wasn't really helping at all. The stimulus checks were nearly enough for a single month's rent. So pushing people into that kind of corner, and doing that for a couple of years, and then having what's happening now with inflation, and again, all the talk of this transhumanist sort of ultra technologically advanced future. It's really a setup, and it shows you how quick they could play their game. You know, it's really, really quick for them. It only takes a couple of years.
Oh, there's no doubt. It's no doubt. So this I do want to go back on one point. This unusual event that I have predicted, that I don't have a lot of details on, that will happen this year. I believe it involves a major change in the internet. I believe that this temporary hiatus is going to be by manufacturer. It's going to be by design. They're going to blame it on something else, like a natural disaster, an X flare, EMP activity, terrorist attack, even an AI virus. They have many items in their playbook that they can always go back to. Now, their playbook can even be compartmentalized, meaning they can provide the what happened to whatever comports with an individual's paradigm. That's the world we're living in now. We're living in a world now where one single major event can occur, and all these different personalities can observe the event, and the government can officially put out 3 official reports about what happened, and people will actually pick 1 or 2 that they believe in, instead of thinking about how weird it is that you gave us 3 choices. You understand? This is the world we're entering in is fundamentally different in the world that we left behind 20 years ago. The world we're entering in now is unraveling. Reality tunnels are coming apart. The AI system that is the governing system of protocols that controls this construct is becoming more and more amorphous. It is losing its ability to control. This is why we see so many strange and weird things that don't make sense. This is why so many anomalies are happening all over the world and unfolding. And this is why those who are very well grounded, those who don't buy into all the misinformation and data saturation and just look at reality objectively, they can clearly see the trajectory of events and where we're going. They can clearly see that this is all almost like a stage play,
Mm-hmm.
and that none of this is really real, and every little thing is put out there as a hook, trying to hook me in so I can just buy into a reality tunnel so I can start traveling down it. Because once I'm moving in the direction, I can always be molded, and my experiences can be conditioned, and therefore my interpretation of what I'm going through can be more subjective. It can be more controlled. So this event, I believe, that's happening this year is going to be systemic. I believe it has everything to do with our telecommunications infrastructure, and because it has everything to do with this infrastructure, it's also going to affect the financial infrastructure. Although
Right.
I don't think the world economies is the focus. Believe me, and I know you can imagine this.
Mm-hmm.
If a flash appears in the sky, whether it's manufactured by the military industrial complex and they call it an X flare, no matter what it is, no matter what the cover story,
Mm-hmm.
if a flash appears in the sky and the media reports it, and 8 minutes later, there isn't a single electronic device working in your home, working anywhere in all the power grids go down at the exact same time. The only things now working are battery operated things. And you don't have much time. I mean, you're going to realize really fast that solar's bullshit. You're going to realize really fast that turbines are bullshit, and you're going to realize really fast that even gas generators are bullshit. Because if nobody's manufacturing gas or even driving around delivering it to the gas stations, it doesn't take but 2 days to dry those pumps. They're gone. They're out.
Mm-hmm.
So if an event, if there's a worldwide internet collapse, even for just 1 week, the damage to the infrastructure would take 6 months to a year to heal, because of all the setbacks, all the repercussions. It's like knocking over the first domino. There's no way to stop all the other dominoes from falling, even if the infrastructure and power grid comes back up 7 days later. There's a tremendous amount of things that should have been functioning that weren't, and now we have to go deal with all these issues as well. It's nightmarish to even think that the worldwide electric grid was to go down for a week. It's nightmarish to think what's going to happen. And there are many scientific think tanks that have put out some pretty good material that show these scenarios. And there's a guy on YouTube that has a good video about the first 48 hours. It's harrowing. If
Yeah.
there is a disaster of epic proportion where all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and there's no power, and it's not just your community, you can't drive 60 miles and go enjoy the power of your mom and dad or your daughters or whatever. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. According to these scientific projections, when people realize after 24 hours that no help is coming, law enforcement has been neutralized, there's no
Mm-hmm.
fire companies coming, that within 48 hours, all the foodstuffs in all the stores of America will be looted. Within 7 days, neighbors will start hunting each other. I
Yep.
mean, these scientific reports are harrowing about what would happen. And yeah, it's fast. It's because people don't keep enough food for an emergency anymore. They always think that they can just run down the road. If I got 3,000 in cash hidden away, then I can just, if something really bad happens, I can just run down the road when my food starts getting short. No, according to these scientific reports, it says you had better take your cash and go spend every bit of it within the first 48 hours, because after 4 or 5 days, no one's taking cash anymore, because every system in the world will switch over to the barter system. Now it's about what can you provide, and because cash will become useless. No one's taking it anymore. The people realizing all this cash in the world don't mean nothing. It's not going to do me any good. We don't even know if the power's coming back on. So I mean, this is in the event that something unusual is reported. And this is how they would control an event like this to induce that panic. They would show it on the national news. International news would show that something unusual just happened, and they would let people talk about it long enough before they just took the whole grid down. So you would automatically assume that the grid came down because of what was reported. So it's they've got all kinds of options in their playbook. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I believe it's going to be a very temporary cessation of internet access. They might call it a virus, and they had to shut it down to clean the servers. I don't know how they're going to play this,
Sure.
but I'm really convinced that when they bring the internet back on, it's going to have some new things in it that we're not going to like. But I'm not convinced that we're going to know they're there.
Okay, so couple things. You're seeing this event that you just explained happen this September, October. Is that correct?
That's right.
And how confident are you in this?
Well, it's
Because I
I've
want to
been really
ask two.
confident.
I want to go two directions. One, I want to know your confidence level, and the second thing is, if this is the case, and it doesn't happen, how will you react to that?
Well, I mean, no one's accurate. No one's 100% accurate in their predictions, and I have never feared being wrong. I say that
Mm-hmm.
on my channel all the time. Now, my accuracy rating is very, very high, but it's not because I'm doing personal predictions. It's because I'm looking at the construct, the arithmetic. Now,
Sure.
I am very, very convinced that something major is going to happen with the infrastructure, and I am very convinced of the timing, September, October. What I'm not convinced in is the magnitude. I don't know if something can be neutralized by more awareness of an event, or if uh, it's not necessary to create all this chaos to do this one little thing. I'm just convinced that this one little thing, changing something about the structure of the internet, is going to have massive future repercussions. And it's going to be from an event in September or October. So the way to rewrap this data is that either one, I am predicting some false cataclysm, some false flag that's used to cover as a cover story to do something to the internet, to introduce something new, another layer of coding that they could have never done while the internet was operating online, something they had to do by bringing it down. So either either I'm predicting something some major, huge, epic proportions, or something's going to be very, very noticeable in September or October to millions of people, not just a small minority, but the majority of people who use the internet for whatever are going to notice something in September or October that is completely novel and absolutely realized to be a new introduction into the internet that changes everything. Either one can be an accurate prediction to an accurate unfoldment to the prediction.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like with that being said, you have prepared for this then. You're currently probably speaking on ways to prepare about this as well. So what
Well, on my channel, I remind my viewers, and I have provided data packs in on thumb drives in case the internet goes down, and when it comes back up, a lot of social media is gone. Uh, when it comes back online, a lot of accounts have been deleted. I am prepared for that. I have these little flash drives right here, 64 gigabyte flash drives, where I provide thousands of PDFs of old books, more books than you could ever read in your life, thousands of books for people to preserve future libraries. When they bring the infrastructure back on, and I have instructions in them where you need to print this material up and have it, because the internet's not guaranteed. Now you see how easy it is to disrupt this. You got to understand, when most of our libraries behind me are all absolutely real books from the 1800s, my whole library, all over the side shelves. Oh, I got upper shelves up here in the floor. All these books are from the 1800s up to 1912.
Mhm.
These are becoming very rare, Jordan. So we're rendering them to all PDFs, and I have thousands that people have sent me, and I've created this digital library. This also has thousands of black and white images I took with my own camera out of all these hundreds of old books, images that Google has never seen, old black and white pictures that are in all these books. I made sure that they're preserved as well. All my books, all my published and unpublished books, hundreds of articles, hundreds of charts that I've drawn, everything is in my data pack, and I've distributed it all over the world. People are still ordering them every week. That is my way of preparing. In the event that the internet goes down, this data that I have amassed in my entire life is distributed by multiple people, and the permissions are all in the data. That, you know, anything ever happens to Archaix and anything happens to the infrastructure, you're more than welcome to publish all this in your own language and distribute it in your own culture. If we're sent back to the 1980s when there was no internet, that's fine too. Publish the books, you're free to do whatever you want with the information. So it's yeah, that's my way of preparation. It's about all I can do. I don't think it's going to get that serious, but I do believe they're going to take down the internet to introduce something new. They're going to integrate something with the internet that's going to seriously affect everything in the future. And it's going to be this year. And we're gonna notice it. Does that mean the internet's not gonna work and we're not gonna have our gaming systems? We're not gonna have YouTube? No, I believe it's all coming back on, but I believe it's coming back on with something new, something unprecedented. And I'm not opposed to them introducing a set series of deep learning algorithms that is an attempt at a real AI.
So let's get a little specific. You're saying that September or October, have you nailed down maybe a week that it'll happen in? Like, have you gotten a little bit more accurate?
No, I haven't really looked that deep, but I plan on doing a video and discussion with Square Peg. She's gone really deep on this. After I brought it to the public attention, she actually ran with the data and has made even more discoveries and all that. She's something else. But I'm about to do a video with her, and then I can probably email you our conclusions.
Well,
Because
I mean, I have my own.
I think she and I are going to go deep on that. We might make further discoveries. This is actually something I haven't talked about in a while, so most of this is just coming straight out of my head. But yeah, it's September, October is the only definitive timing that I have for this event.
Yeah, I've been studying the October timeframe, of course, because it's the most popular month for market crashes. And like I said earlier in the podcast, it takes about 1 year after the end of the Shemitah for the market to bottom. So this is all kind of in alignment for me because it's geopolitical events or chaos that happens, some false flag, whatever, is what leads to the markets having these corrections anyway. So it's not just about money, it's about all things tied together. But the later half of October is really promising. There's going to be a full moon, but also there's an eclipse on October 14th, total solar eclipse. And
so this is 7 years after. That's 7 years after the eclipse in 2017, or is what 6 years?
Well, I haven't actually looked too much into the eclipse of 2017, but the reason why that does matter, that would be about 6 years. Well, when was the eclipse? Do you know the date in 2017?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have it in a video, but I don't know the date.
Sure. So, I mean, it was about it'll be 7 years if it happened in October, or after October. But if it happened before, it'd still be around the 6-year mark. But 2017 is huge. I did a decode on the Super Bowl, which I don't watch sports. I don't really have much of a desire to, but a lot of people just wanted me to decode it. And a part of my decode was 2017, because that was the last Super Bowl that that was the only Super Bowl that the Eagles won. And I was seeing a lot of negative aspects for the Eagles tied to my methodology, which allowed me to determine that the Chiefs would win. But also in 2017 was when Trump became president, and the phenomenon attached to him, QAnon. Q is the 17th, letter in the alphabet. So I was seeing that there was some 17 and 2017 symbolism tied to all of the events that would be happening this year. And now that you're talking about that eclipse in 2017, it's definitely making me think, especially with that being a 7-year cycle, because that's huge whenever you have these 7-year cycles tied to big events. Anyways, that eclipse that happens in October 14th would be a trigger point for me in my work personally. And then if we go up a little bit later into the month, around October 30th, pretty much right there at the end, that's the 303rd day of the year. And if I start to compare the dates that have been significant thus far in this year, I'm definitely getting something to happen in later October after that eclipse. I would not be surprised if it was between the 14th of October through October 30th, and that eclipse could be the trigger point.
Okay. You mentioned the dollar, the crash of the dollar. We've been talking about the fiat currency and all that. Listen, I do have a series of predictions, and I still stand by them. I still stand by them. They're 2 years old. They're on my videos on my channel, and that is that because of international events, very, very, very soon, probably unfolding this year, but due to international events, the United States is going to basically unveil a very old plan. It was Condoleezza Rice many, many years ago let the cat out of the bag, but this is United States is also into long-term planning, and this whole collapse of the dollar weakening against BRICS and other nations now turning away from the dollar. Listen, every bit of this was expected to happen in the near future, but one thing that must happen in the near future is the funding of a third world war. This has been on the table for a long time. Just like the First and the Second World Wars were completely mapped out, all the participants were known 40 years in advance and published in the 1880s as to how World War I was going to unfold and what it was going to accomplish. All this was known in the 1880s. Albert Pike published it, and so did Mazzoli, or whatever his name is, where we get the word mafia from, which is actually an acronym. It's actually an acronym, MAFIA. This guy here outlined all three world wars and published that in the 1880s, 1890s. So World War I happened to a T. Then World War II happened exactly as published in the 1880s. So I know that World War III will do as well. And in World War III, we have a very conservative Christian Reich, basically federation of nations that are going to make war against Islam for a trespass. I believe it involves the capture of Jerusalem to secure the safety of the Dome of the Rock. I believe the Israelis are going to do something stupid, and it's going to start a jihad, not per se against Israel, but because they have no choice but to go protect the Dome of the Rock. So I believe they're going to probably announce some type of archaeological discovery right there that's going to require them to dig under the Dome of the Rock. And Islam is going to get infuriated because they know that the Israelis are going to claim that the Temple Mount is there, and which in the Ark of the Covenant. And it's just going to be the whole thing is going to be staged to start World War III. But way before this World War III starts, Condoleezza Rice said some very interesting things. She said since the 1920s, the United States has had a policy of buying most of its oil from foreign countries. At the same time, we have had our own oil companies have been finding oil all over the United States and just capping the wells. We mainly drill and frack to get the natural gases out, and then we cap the wells, and we have capped wells. Condoleezza Rice basically said that the time is coming in the future when the dollar is going to be attacked, and we're going to be ready, because when we uncap our wells, our new economy is going to be a petrodollar. We're going to back our own money with our own dollar, and we're going to catapult. The United States economy is going to be catapulted above all other nations. And this was long-term planning. This was mentioned like 20 years ago. So I find it very interesting that even in my isometric analysis, I see the exact same thing. I see the United States very quickly, I'm talking about starting this year, recover from some type of financial disaster very rapidly. And
Yes.
in all my predictions, I tell people, man, this financial collapse that's coming is going to be staged. And in the United States, the transition is going to flow. We're going to go into a new system, but people are going to actually like it. It's
Yeah.
not going to be what you think. So this is what I've been showing in my predictions, and because I don't see all the doom and gloom that other people say. I do see other areas of the world taking a
And
hard hit,
I don't
but
either. Yes.
I don't see the United States taking that hit. I see that that we are about to enter a new phase of reconstruction in the United States. We're going to internalize our economy. We are going to use international events as an excuse to cut off the billions of dollars of funding we've been sending overseas, and we're going to rebuild our infrastructure. But at the same time, we're going to fracture off areas of the United States that have been so corrupted with liberalism that the monies will be focused on the more conservative states and conservative areas, and that the United States is going to become two things at the exact same time. One of them is a wasteland of urban environments that liberalism has totally corrupted, and the other one is going to be very well policed conservative zones where everybody's going to want to live, but they're not going to be able to get in if they don't already live there.
Yeah, I think we talked about this actually a little bit on our last podcast that we did 7 months ago. And I was telling everyone in my work that I do not feel that the dollar is going to collapse the way that most people popularly believe. I think that we are going to shift into a fiat like stable coin sort of digital dollar, whether it's under the Federal Reserve or a completely new globalism corporation of sorts. That could also be another thing where there's a merger of the central banks, the banks that are the printers, and who knows what they have up their sleeve with this. But I know that they're going blockchain. I definitely believe that they're going blockchain. And the CBDC seems to be something that they're in the process of rolling out. I know that they're pretty much full on ready in China, and that infrastructure has been laid out even in the United States. But there are places where there is no infrastructure laid out, as I was saying to you before we started this podcast, like in Mexico, where in Mexico City it's going on, but a majority of the nation, it's like borderline third world. In a lot of India, it's not been laid out. In a lot of rural China, it has not been laid out. They don't have that infrastructure just yet. So what I talk about with the dollar is not the collapse of the world reserve. I'm talking about all fiat monies as we know it, out besides the US dollar, going into collapse. And the US dollar will be the cleanest out of the dirty laundry. Then they will create this transition for those nations that had a failed currency first. America will pretty much be the last one to go through this transition. So I know that they're going to go in a process that is just with the easiest places to pull it off. And then it's going to be the places that it's the hardest last. And I think with America being armed, almost instantly capable of militarizing ourselves, it's going to be a lot more difficult, especially in those rural environments, to pull this kind of change off. Because when people wake up and they notice no money in their bank account, or they notice less money in their bank account, they will be out on the streets rioting, losing their fucking minds.
Yeah.
But there's places in the world where they're already used to their government controlling and taking their stuff from them without asking, and they're very obedient in the process. So the long and short of it is I think until the next Shemitah, which is going to be 2028, 2029, that the United States is going to have a very prosperous 7 years, but it's going to go through something initially, and it's not going to be isolated to the United States of America. It's going to be the whole world that goes through an event. And this is where me and you are both in full alignment about the September-October timeframe. I think that will be the trigger event, and it will cascade into April around that eclipse and around that April 15th date, and maybe start to wither away into the summertime and fall end of 2024. But by then, that's enough time for this infrastructure to be laid out and actually in practice by nations that have a failed currency. And the failure of the currency is nothing new. It's been going on since the C19 event. The Turkish lira and plenty of other countries have been going through a lot of problems, a lot of issues. So we have
So I have a question for you real quick. You said 2027, 2028, right?
2028, 2029.
Okay, 2028, 2029. Just as a matter of personal curiosity, if you think that something major is going to occur in 2028 or 2029, you would do well to just go on Google and research, like, on this day in history, 1968, on 1967, those 2 years, and see if anything that you're predicting for those 2 years of 2028 and 2029, if you already have data that's going in a certain direction that basically tells you what could possibly happen in 2028 and 2029, then I suggest you go research the socio-political events that were unfolding and documented in 1968 and in 1967, the year before. Because I promise you, if something is going to happen, you're going to see some type of correlate in those 2 years. This is an isometric projection. The epicentral year is 1998. And this is something me and a lot of my followers on my channel do. We engage in this activity all the time. We find all kinds of amazing things.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I mean, if you take 1966, for instance, that is a Shemitah year that ends, and then it leads to 67, which will be the year after. And again, definitely a connection there. But for
You say
me,
1967? Or no, you said 1966?
yeah, 1966 would be the end of that Shemitah cycle between 65 and 66.
Okay. Well,
But
the parallel for that would be 2030.
Okay, so why this is so important is because I've been telling people that I am not anticipating problems in the United States of America at scale until we have the 100-year cycle of the Great Depression. So that'll just be 2029. So I feel
Right.
we're going to have a bull run into 2027, 2028. It's going to end like every Shemitah does, going to be a pullback into 29. And that's going to be the big one. Like I'm talking about like really, really big, but this is so far away and there's so much change that's going to happen between now and then. So I don't focus on it
Yeah.
too much. The only reason I bring it up to people is because there's so much FUD about the US dollar collapsing and like
Yeah.
China becoming the world power that takes over. And I don't believe this at all. I disagree
I
with
don't
that.
either.
Yeah, and I'm trying to tell people that I look at things based on my research, my decoding, and America is essentially like the Garden of Eden until 2029. I think it's going to be the first time ever where everyone starts to taste the medicine of, reality. Right now, we're going through some problems, obviously, but what we're going to have in 2029, 2030, I think is going to be rough. As
Listen, you
rough.
and I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed because I don't know the details of your type of analytics. I don't know, but I'm very impressed with your output, what you're saying, because I am so on board, and I've already said it on my channel multiple times that we're going through hiccups this year, but our economy is about to skyrocket and it's going to be unprecedented. I've been saying that, and I've been telling people that China is smoke and mirrors.
Yep.
China is on the verge of collapse, and
Yep.
everything you hear about China is being used by the media as a boogeyman. But the truth is, the one-child policy has basically collapsed their infrastructure. They're in trouble now. They don't have the ability to invade anyone in the West. Maybe Taiwan, that's about it. But China's in deep trouble right now financially. Their infrastructure is terrible, and this little situation with BRICS was only a way for other nations in the BRICS contract to receive things cheaper from China, and it just keeps China afloat. China's not a problem whatsoever. That's all smoke and mirrors. It's bullshit.
Correct. And it's important that people see it as such because it's become such a popular narrative that the world's going to be taken over by China, not just the United States, but the whole world. And I disagree. And I've studied into China enough to know that it's just optics. But one other thing to mention, Jason, about my work is I always look at things based off these cyclical kind of repeats. And Spanish flu allowed me to determine exactly when COVID would end on the world
Right.
stage. So I was just taking that 2 year and 2 month cycle and applying it to this March of 2020. You take 2 years and 2 months and you get to May 2022. And we saw by February into March of 2022, the world started loosening up the restrictions. And by May, pretty much you could travel anywhere without even proof of vaccination. So it's pretty obvious to me that you can just go back to these similar or like events and
Right.
utilize these numbers. So if you take from Spanish flu till the C19, the end of the C19 event, or sorry, not even if you take from event to event, it was 102 years. Okay, so if you're looking at the Great Depression and when it kind of the process was starting, to me that's a 1927, and then you're adding that 102, and you're getting into that 2029 timeframe. To me,
Yeah.
that 102, that 201 number has been given to us many times. Like we had in November of 2019, event 201. And event 201 was just the playbook of what they ended up doing during the pandemic.
Yeah.
They're not hiding these numbers at all. So we're getting 102 years after Spanish flu was the C19 event. Like it's pretty amazing. And I think that this time right now is a very important time for people to just get it together, man, and not be in fear, first of all, but become sovereign, and sovereign happens at the soul level, then it goes into the mind. And at the mind level, you could really do some amazing things in this world. So it's probably a good place for us to wrap this up. And I would love to connect again soon. Maybe let this simmer out and let people digest it. And if they have any questions that come up for ideas for us to get into, one thing I would like to talk about next time, or maybe even with you and Logan, is May, the month of May,
Oh
because
yeah, month of May is fascinating. Yes,
okay,
it
so
is.
let's talk about that. Maybe we could get together in a couple weeks if that works for you. And I want to talk about May because I've come across a date, May 17th through May 19th, which I believe will be the end of all bullish market activity for the entire global economy. That is it. I think that by May 17th into 19th, anything that is tradable on the stock market will start to keel over. And I'm really, really interested in it all because of the New York Stock Exchange starting on May 17th of 1792. So I don't know if you or your people want to go check out some of those things, but it would be the 231-year cycle since
Okay.
that.
That's okay. Can you tell that's 1792, but what about the London Stock Exchange?
When did that
Because
start?
the New York Stock Exchange is an extension of the city, which is London. So, uh, what do you know when the London Stock Exchange began?
1801. Holy shit.
Oh, really? 1801?
It
Right
was
after the
found.
Napoleonic War.
Wow, that's incredible because that means moving into this following year, it'll be 222 years. That's a very, very powerful number.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Let's see.
During the year of
17.
2022, we pretty much had a downtrend in the markets during the entire year, and that was during the Shemitah. Again, like that's why that's so important. But
Wow.
wow,
So you do know, I'm gonna tell you something real quick. I just saw on my calculator. You said the stock market started in 1792 in New York.
New York Stock
Okay.
Exchange. Yep.
Okay. The year 2023 is exactly 33 times that we have had a 7-year cycle. It is 231 years.
So yeah, my date I've come across in so many ways, and you brought up the number 33. I have like 433 connections, 2303 connections, maybe 1333 connections. So it's all tied to this
Right.
perfectly. So I would love for us to talk about that because there's plenty of time between now and May 17th. But yeah, for anyone who's out there listening to this and your fellow decoders tuning in, May 17th through May 19th is really fascinating for me. And I think me and Logan have nailed it. Like this is probably going to be one of the better predictions and collaborative predictions. So I would love to get you on board with it and see if there's anything you find, because perhaps you find something that's not that specific date, and that could add to the value
Well,
of the decode.
May 15th, May 16th, and May 17th, depending upon where you are in the world and what traditions you and calendars you adhere to, that is the exact timing of the Phoenix phenomenon resets, when all these edits and recodes of and all these changes in
Wow.
our reality occur. But that's on a definitive timeline of every 138 years. But that is the exact same time every year that it happens.
Well, so like I'll just say something really quickly now that you brought that up. Okay, this is huge. All right, so May 18th is the 138th day of the year.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So
And
that was
that's basically once everything stabilizes, because the Phoenix phenomenon begins around May 16th, and it's not a single day.
yeah, it should be a
It
3 day.
yeah, it carries over. It's I mean, it's a darkness. It's not just earthquakes. It's red dust falling out of the sky. But during the cataclysm, this is the focus of my channel, it is during these natural disasters that all these little edits and all these little adjustments to our reality are made. All these little introductions are made. And it's always a natural disaster that covers up something that's more subtle.
All right, man. Well, this is amazing place to leave off because I know it's going to bring up a future conversation, and that May timeframe is definitely a heavy hitter. And leave it at that. I really appreciate connecting with you. It was a blast. We'll definitely get this up as soon as possible. Send over the link.
Yeah,
And
send me the link. Send me the link, and I'm gonna let everybody know in my community, man, that we're live over there.
Beautiful. So I'm WatersAbove. My channel's WatersAbove on YouTube, watersabove.com if you want to check out my website. And anything you want to share before we wrap this one up, brother?
No, I'm good. I'm good, and I'm glad that all my situation over here came back online so we can get this done.
Yeah, I know we've had to postpone it, and we've been talking about this for a while. So it's all good, though. It all happens for a reason, right?
Yes, it does.
All right, brother. Well, take care, and we'll be connecting soon, all right?
All right, later.
Take care, brother.